Tim, you're back.
And it's not an emergency this time. We got a little bit of, real estate and a runway that we can play with.
A little bit, like only a few days though. I really didn't give you that much time. I feel like I always just kind of text you out of the blue being like, hi, want to be on? So thank you.
Like just in in good faith, can I admit something?
Yeah.
I didn't read your email. So I don't know what we're talking about. So this will be good.
This is even better. I could have sent you anything. I could throw you some wild questions right now and you would have no idea. That's okay. You know what? We welcome all. So welcome to the full episode of the Tim Tollefson, the Timothy. What's your middle name? Can I expose that on this show?
Sure. Mark.
Do people know this? Is this like a first time you heard it here first, folks? Timothy
Breaking
Mark
news.
Tollefson.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you know that I go by my middle name? Whoa.
Seriously?
Actually, people. Oh my God. Whoa. Yeah. Maybe people.
I did not know that. I did not know that. What's your real name?
Is Mary Adeline Thompson. Your face. Oh my God. Oh. Your face. I need to post this video of this conversation because your face just contorted in an amazing way.
Can I just call you Matt?
Actually, that's how I sign things is Matt. And people get really confused because they're like, wait a minute. Where's the M come from? But Matt's great because then it's kind of like a gender neutral situation.
Good choice on going with the middle.
Hey, Tim, be nice, Mark.
Hey, my mother's name is Mary. Watch your mouth.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, you just flipped that. Great. That was really well done. All right, we're moving on. Timothy, Mark, Tollefson, welcome to the Where the Climate Things Are podcast, which I know you were actually one of the first people to really be like, that's a great name. Because I hadn't really told many people. And then I had you on as an emergency guest. And you were like,
it's a fantastic name.
Hey, it's a Ryan Thrower infused original for sure.
You can see it.
You can see it in the branding. It's
dripping with Thrower energy.
With Throwerisms. Exactly. Okay. Well, since you don't know what we're talking about today, I'm just going to start out with a real softball. Can you introduce yourself again, or for the first time, to folks listening? Who is Tim Tollefson?
Who am I?
Take that as you will.
I'm a wandering generalist. Is that a word? I'm a wandering generalist with like a mediocrity problem. I like to do too many things and I suddenly think I'm going to pursue it with excellence. And then I get sidetracked and I want to go do something else. And so I feel like, in that spirit, some of the different things that I wander generally into would be physical therapy and like performance oriented things. Ultra running and distance running is probably like my deepest thing. Has been a lifelong runner and distance runner. Currently coming up on a decade of being a pro trail and ultra runner. More recently, I am a event director, race director, community gatherer, organizer. And so a little bit of everything. It's all of it, though, I think really could be tied together with a thread of like relationships. And I like people. I like talking. I like hearing what other people have to say. I like conversations. And I think that curiosity kind of drives a lot of what I do.
That makes so much sense, knowing you as I do now. Great. Thank you. A wandering generalist. I love that. I also love where you've wandered to. Like, you're still pro and you're also pro runner, and you're also creating these spaces for folks in the trail community that have honestly since become, in like 3 years, become one of the bigger events in the entire trail space globally. So that's pretty cool. We'll get into that more. Okay, so again, this will be a pop quiz question.
I love it. Every single one's a pop quiz.
I know, it's all pop quiz. I also know you, and I know that you I feel like you not only read it and also took notes. Like the emergency one, this was the best. I talked to Ryan about this today. I was like, Tim, I texted you like very late the night before, and then we hopped on within 24 hours, and you had like notes, like copious notes on questions I didn't even give you. So, you know, let's expose the real truth here. Okay, so the question I ask every guest that comes on the podcast is, what was your aha moment on climate or environment? Like, what has sort of woken you up to what's going on? Was there a moment in time, or was it sort of something that gradually dawned on you?
What was my aha moment? Ooh, I can't say there was necessarily an aha moment. You know, if there was one, maybe it was meeting Lindsay. She is she's an individual with like extreme climate anxiety, and so like probably like most in my life, I take notice of weather, but not necessarily like the bigger picture of like what's happening. It's like, oh, that was an unusually snowy year. Oh, we've had a bunch of years that aren't very snowy, or these wildfires are really bumming me out, and not really connecting things. But when I met her in 2005, 20 years ago, I would say that would have been like maybe a bit of a inflection point. But you talk to her and she'd be like, I haven't rubbed off on you at all. So like it was all wasted, and like everything I care about, you still don't care about. So like take that for what it is. But I would say that was probably a pivotal moment. Like I would almost categorize myself more as like, in that lead up, it was more a frog in boiling water moment. Like just slow, like gradual increase of things before you realize, wow, things are kind of literally burning around us, you know? So that's probably my best characterization.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think climate anxiety is actually, I'm going to have an episode come out either this week or next week, whenever that happens, kind of around the mental health connection with climate, and how like deep-seated anxieties and emotions like really exist in a lot of us, and we don't really talk about it. And I think that's something that, I mean, I know you've spoken at length about mental health and emotions, and like I just think that there's so much there around climate that we maybe even don't label in our lives, and yet like it's kind of ever present. At least for me, that was actually another aha moment for me, speaking to this person who's launched sort of a online platform around like mental health care around environment, like around kind of feelings we have for environment. So yeah, interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much we could go into, but before I ask a little more about your most recent race director foray, I'm curious if you can tell, like, there's so many podcasts out there that you have interviewed on, like describe you as a runner, where you talk about your running career. I would love to hear a little more about yourself as a runner, and also possibly take this moment to say that I did start ultra running before you. I'd like everyone to note that.
What was the date?
Okay, you know what, Tim? We don't need to go into dates. Anyways, so
this is not a podcast about facts and data. This is just, this is built on opinion and emotion.
Opinion and emotion only, exactly as I just said. Yes. So yeah, I mean, like, just paint the picture. I think the podcast brings together folks who have outdoor recreation passions and climate interests or work, or in some ways are engaging with, making either of those spaces better. So just curious, like, who are you as a runner? And we won't dwell too much on that, but I want to paint the picture a little bit for folks of like how you then came to be a race director.
Well, I, like a lot, started running at an early age. And actually, this was back when, I don't know if it still exists, the presidential fitness awards were given out for like someone that could run certain speed in a mile and do push-ups and pull-ups. And so when I was in 5th grade, or maybe 6th grade, it was actually right when we moved to California. I was 10 years old. That was really my true introduction to like running as a sport. And I did the mile that was timed, and I got a signed letter by this would have been Bush maybe at the time.
Jeez.
And it, he was like, great job, Timmy T. Like, I'm so proud of you. It was very personal.
I hope you have that
he did this it was like Santa Claus. He took all the time but that was my first foray into the sport of running. And then over the years, really kind of got deeper and deeper into it, and ran throughout high school, walked onto a Division II program in college, was fortunate to make the cut my freshman year and stay in the university for 4 more years. And then once graduating, Lindsay, my now wife, and I just kept pursuing these dreams of trying to better ourselves as runners. And, through all of that, being in California, we were immersed with things, as I kind of spoke to earlier, of, noticing different changes in weather, but not really connecting things, where it was usual for us to have periods in the summer where there'd be wildfire smoke, just kind of like oppressive
Right.
in nature. And you'd go out and either run or not run. And then my senior year of college in 2008, we had a really bad fire actually up in Paradise, which then 10 years later had the campfire, which, was absolutely devastating. But in 2008, there was a fire up there. And that was my first real memory of like weeks on end of just oppressive smoke. And we could, it had just selfishly, it impacts your training, because I can't go outside.
Yeah.
I'm a poor college student. I don't have a gym membership. So you start to kind of connect these dots of like how it impacts you personally. And I think that, maybe that was a bit more of these aha moments you're talking about, where it, okay, so this is good. See, I didn't read your questions. I'm coming back at it.
It's natural.
And so I think, through that, it kind of exposed me. But then, as I mentioned, then I've been running professionally now for a decade and traveling the world. And just through my relationship with Lindsay and digging into things we care about, recognizing that this is actually, I read a really cool book. It's called "We Can't Run Away from This." I don't know if you know about this, but it's written by an ultrarunner about the climate crisis, and he labels it. I don't know. Can we say I think it's a made up word, but it's okay. He says it's a kerfuffle fuck. We
can say
word.
Yes, we can say okay. Explicit content.
But that's what they label.
That's also like a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah. I think it's a British term. He's a Brit. But
that sounds British.
Kind of, I think, through all of my experiences as a runner, traveling the globe, kind of starting to piece things together, that myself, like a lot of runners, kind of assume that we're in a sport that is the least impactful on the environment. We don't have any negative impact. We just put on shoes, go run, and we're not emitting, emissions that are harmful. We're not contributing to these. And then as you start to kind of look under the surface, realizing that, there's so much baked into the sport of running, from our kits to the way we travel to everything, it all has an impact. And just, in general speaking, humans have impact. And so I think that was a bit of a wake up moment also, that, hey, as individuals, thinking that we don't have an impact, we actually do. And then having traveled to a bunch of different races, seeing how they're operating, as the seed of an idea of starting a race here locally came to the surface, Lindsay and I talked about, okay, we want to share it with people, but we also want to try to do it differently. At least, challenge ourselves as we're doing it, to ask questions like, why are we doing this? And could we find a better way of doing it? And so setting out to build a larger scale event thoughtfully, and not having the intention or goal of just maximal profits or leveraging certain resources and depleting it. But hey, how can we not only do it conscientiously, knowing that we're flawed and we're human, but then also use it as kind of like a Trojan horse to educate people on things that we care about. And so that's kind of where Trail Fest has come to be over the last couple of years, of this opportunity for us to gather and connect and share stories that we think are important. And if nothing less, hopefully plant a seed in people's mind that maybe they should think about something, and then they go look into it further, because we're far from the experts. But we say that we have a platform, and we could hopefully use that to elevate messages that we do care about.
Absolutely, which I think you absolutely do, and we will get into. Can you set the stage for us with Mammoth? So I want to hear more about Trail Fest. I appreciate the background for you as a runner and the changes you've noticed. It's really funny. I have to take this moment to say, when I interviewed Dakota, I asked him a question, which I've since kind of taken from my question bank, that was like, when you run, what changes have you noticed in the landscapes that you're running on? And he was like, well, usually I'm running pretty fast, so I don't notice. I have to give him a little bit of shit
I don't
now.
know if you know me, but I'm actually kind of a big deal.
It was so funny. And then I was like, true. I'm not running as fast and I am noticing more. That is true. Which I just love so much. But I mean, Ryan has told me a lot about like driving around Mammoth with you in the car, and you'll start, I don't even know if you know that you do this or that you remember doing this, but like, you know, you'll point to, oh, this like waterway, this river has changed, or this mountain and this kind of vegetation looks different. And how tell us how long you've lived in Mammoth, and start to like share some of the changes that you have noticed in the local context, because I think that also helps then set the stage for like what Trailfest is doing, and where Trailfest is such a part of, like, obviously it's called Mammoth Trail Fest, but it's such a part of that event. And I think the place-based nature of the event makes it so powerful. So yeah, I mean, like, take us back. When did you get to Mammoth, and what have you started to see there environment-wise?
So let's take a look into the time machine. Let's go way, way back. It was the year 2008. Barack Obama was just elected president.
Oh my God, take me back. Wait, yes. Okay, wait, this is feeling really good. Okay.
So Lindsay and I, we had one of my college best friends still to this day. He was recruited from Chico State, our little D2 college in Northern California, to come join the Mammoth Track Club, a professional organization of Olympians, world champions. And he brought us with him on his trip. And Lindsay and I said, yeah, we'll go with you. We're up for a road trip. Where's Mammoth? Which state? Like, having grown up in California, I did not know this place existed.
That's awesome.
It's, 2.5 hours south of Tahoe, but it's in the Eastern Sierra, tucked high on the, eastern slopes of the Sierra Nevada. But it's remote enough that if you don't make a really deliberate effort to get there, or if you didn't grow up in Southern California, then there's almost, there's less incentive to go, because you have Tahoe right on the outskirts of Sacramento, the Bay Area, Reno. And so growing up, we went to Tahoe, but we came with him in 2008 and just fell in love with the region and just how dramatic this whole landscape is, from, these 3,000 to 4,000 foot valley floors up to 14,000 foot peaks overhead. The drastic relief between the two is unlike anything you can find really in the lower 48 for the most part, and especially compared to Tahoe. And so we decided if we could, we'd want to come back here someday. And I was lucky enough to land an internship while I was in grad school at the clinic here as a physical therapist in 2011. And then we basically never left. So we've been here full time since 2011. And what was fascinating about that time period was the winter season of 2010, 2011 was the historically highest snow amount on record. And I think it was 617 inches maybe of snow that year for the season. And we came right at the tail end of that. And people were skiing into August at the resort. And my buddy and I took a backpacking trip that summer, and we went out deep into the wilderness area. And I remember there were still, it looked like glaciers, which really do not exist in California anymore. And this was end of July, early August. And I was just blown away at like how much snow, ice, all this stuff was happening. And then we went into a 4-year drought in California. So we experienced the very tail end of the massive winter, and then 4 years of pure drought. And so that was fascinating, just kind of that context of seeing the two extremes right out of the gates as kind of getting into Mammoth. And then at the tail end of that drought, which was in 2015, locally, one of our communities, Swall Meadows, 40 plus homes burned down in a fire. And it was in February, which normally we're covered in snow. And that was another one of those like, oh my gosh, this is not normal, or there's something going on. This is strange that homes are burning in the Sierra in February. And so I guess fast forward to today, we've been here 15 years just about, and we've kind of seen those boom and bust cycles of, we've now just 2 years ago had another record year, basically over 700 inches of snow fell. But before that and after that, we had very low seasons. And, we're fortunate because we're such a high town. Our main town is about 8,000 feet. in context, I think Tahoe is around 6,200, 6,300 feet, maybe. We have high enough altitude that most of our storms still stay snow, but we are getting our rain level is raising occasionally during winters. And so it's been fascinating just to kind of see that parity between the highs and the lows in just a short decade period of time. And then, as we mentioned, as a runner and a recreator, mainly our stuff that we love is in summer, seeing our fire seasons go from when it was kind of a defined season to now being a little it's almost more like there's no defined borders of when fires are occurring in the West, especially in California. And so living through, especially 2020, I recall, we had a fire on the west side of the Sierra, but for 8 straight weeks, we basically couldn't see the sky and we couldn't go outdoors because the fire or the air quality was so bad. It was literally 8 weeks from like Labor Day through Halloween. And that was, a real kind of awakening moment of this is our new normal, and I don't like that term necessarily, but that was kind of the reality that we were living with. And so if we tie that into what we're doing with TrailFest, trying to run a business in kind of peak fire season in California is kind of a foolish thing to do. And so like every year we just kind of hold our breath that we hope we can execute what we want and share this with people. But knowing that we could pour the time, resources, and everything into it, and it could be canceled because of a fire. And obviously, there's a lot more to that than just like holding an event. But I think it really speaks to recreation in general is so impacted by what's happening with these changes or these inclement weather patterns that it's been fascinating to see just from a little microcosm of the Eastern Sierra and Mammoth over the decade, kind of seeing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And which then brings us back to TrailFest, because I loved, like, the first year I went was the first year, I think, 2022.
That was. So you saw the film?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So wait, that's right. That was the first year. That makes sense. And
Lindsay and I wanted to launch the first one in 2021.
Yeah.
But there was a massive fire in Tahoe and they closed the entire national forest in California.
Yeah.
And so basically our permit got pulled because we couldn't enter the forest. And so
you had permits. So you had permits for the race in 2021.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was, for us, it was a small enough event, like not many people knew about it. Like, I think there was understanding of like, we wanted to go, but that's, it didn't happen. But that was also coming out of the gates, a punch to the face of, should we really do this? Like this is what's going to happen. Like we're rolling the dice every single season. And part of the reason we chose the season that we're in is to help our local economy and tour like our local residents through a tough shoulder season, which is typically between the summer activities and winter starting. So like we fill a void economically for our residents, which is beneficial, but we run a risk every year as a business, knowing that we're like in peak fire danger.
Yeah. Wow, that's super interesting. I didn't know about the first year plans, like that the 2021 year had been in the works. I mean,
but 2022, you were there.
2022. So 2022, that was, I guess, I mean, you're welcome for being at your first event. I'm just kidding.
I don't recall you being there, but I'm sure.
Oh my goodness. That's also probably true. You were, I will say, I don't think you'd slept in 4 days. So there was like a glaze to your eyes, We were all like, is he okay? Yeah, this is like also to say it's extremely taxing putting on a race, and you do a great job every year. But I think what really struck me was the inclusion of, like, that's actually where, I don't know if you know this either, that's where I met Dakota for the first time. That's where I met Nate. Like they were there doing a booth for Footprints, which we were laughing about recently, actually saying like, I was like, yeah, what were you guys doing? And he was like, just talking to people about climate, and I'm like, that's great. But I think they did like a raffle. And they had like no tickets, and they were raffling off a backpack or something. I was like, guys, you got to get the raffle out there. Like we got to, anyways. But then you had a great panel. I think Footprints was on, like, I think Dakota and Nate maybe participated, but then Runners for Public Lands was there as well. And I remember Camila Jornet spoke, and I believe the executive director of Runners for
Vic.
Public Lands, possibly. There we go, Vic. And I felt immediately like, and I mean, I truly am not just saying this because it's you and you're here, but I probably, I probably wouldn't say this to your face otherwise. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Like, I felt, it's too much of a compliment. I felt like this is a different event. This is a different theme and feeling and ethos. And I mean, you have these amazing cultural performances too, we should say, from local dancers who represent, I believe, where are they from? Is it Mexico that their dancers are from?
So Sophia Flores, she's a local to Mammoth, but she teaches traditional dance. And so she started this dance company to, educate and share that cultural dance with younger, like Latino women. And she has done it's amazing. So like she kicks off Trail Fest every year with, her students performing for everyone there.
I love that. And I saw that this past year too. And it just feels like a different vibe. And I think that when I realized the amount of inclusion through film and tabling and panels talks about the environment, I realized that, again, this was doing something more and something a bit different. And I think you began to talk about this, but I'd love to dig into this more. Like you said, you and Lindsay wanted to showcase, like, kind of show, not tell, or whatever, like have the event also showcase like your practices and your beliefs and your values. And I'm curious because I have to believe like maybe that costs more. Maybe there are some trade-offs here, like doing it right by the environment and by sort of the social and environmental impact piece. Putting on a race, I'm sure, is tough. And so I was just curious, like, what are some of those trade-offs? Are there trade-offs, or are you like, no, it's a no-brainer? Like, of course, we're going to have an educational panel on climate. Like, like, I don't know. Like, how do you think about that?
Well, what you said at the very end, I guess, is sort of the philosophy is like, of course we're going to do it. Why not? Let's just go. And we'll deal. It's kind of like, we'll forge ahead and just see what happens. And obviously that comes from a place of privilege in the sense that we created it from nothing. So we're not appeasing anyone to put this on, with the exception of like, we're thinking about our runners and the experience, and we want to make sure they are taken care of, but like, we're not trying to fulfill, any sort of playbook or needs of a organization outside of us, that no one's pulling the strings to tell us what to do. So we can literally just make what we want to see, which I think there's a beauty in that, in crafting kind of the experience you want, or use it as the platform to share a message you feel, that you feel passionate about, or you think is important for others to be exposed to. And so there are obvious trade-offs where if you just think of it financially as kind of like a business, and thankfully I didn't go to business school, so maybe this is where like my naivety benefits me, but like in an event, and this goes for like, Taylor, when she's on tour, like the profits are made in merch, that's where you, like, any artist will tell you that you're not really
but
making
your merch
money.
Is amazing.
Your merch is, but so like, that was a number one thing. Like Lindsay's like, absolutely no t-shirts. We are not doing shirts. And that in theory to us made perfect sense, and again, being runners for our entire lives, we don't need another t-shirt. And so out of the gates, we just didn't offer t-shirts. And we heard from people about that.
Interesting.
In a feedback form, it basically ended up being a perfect split, 30-30, 33-33-33, of a third of people loved that there was no shirt. A third of people were angry there was no shirt.
Outraged.
And a third of people wanted the option of a shirt or to deny it. And so but it was, we learned, and, but it was, there have been a lot of those instances over the last couple of years of recognizing that when we are as humans conditioned so much to a certain way of doing something, if we suddenly are offered something else, and maybe it can be a shock to the system. But I think we're finding that we're okay if it's a shock to the system, because we think it's important, and we think that hopefully this spurs a conversation with someone that they could then go lead on and talk with others, or elicit some sort of change, or at minimum a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything we do really has a huge impact and changes things, but we hope that it at least gives all of us pause so that we can be aware of what we're engaging with. And so
Yeah.
there have been a lot of those moments over the last several years of, maybe feeling some of the financial hardships or, even like feedback or social like challenges of doing something a certain way. But I think it's a conviction we feel strongly enough that we continually check ourselves. And,
Hmm.
obviously the elephant in the room, we are a remote town, so people are traveling to come to us. So like
Yeah.
we're starting the event with two black eyes, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
we're not naive to that fact that travel is like probably the biggest impact any runner has. But if we can maybe make use of that travel and have it thoughtful where we only have one event throughout the year, and we try to
Hmm.
condense it all so that when you come, you get maximum benefit of that 3, 4, 5 day weekend.
Oh
And it's not
yeah.
just like a bib and bail where you're going to show up and leave and go to your next one. Like we hope it is a little more meaningful, and
Hmm.
it is a opportunity to let people be exposed or learn or grow or challenge themselves. So I guess that's all to say that it hasn't always been super smooth, but I think we believe in what we're doing enough that we continue to check ourselves, and we make mistakes every year. Like it's,
Sure.
I, in the thick of it, when you said I don't sleep for 4 days, like I go and I grab a sparkling water that's in a plastic bottle. It's like I
Sure,
do things
dude.
that
Of
like, there,
course.
but I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just important with
Yeah.
all that,
That's
like to
interesting.
admit imperfection and not
Hmm.
feel like any of us can do it, absolutely perfect. And,
Yeah.
get Lindsay on board. She'll be the first to say, oh, Tim, wag a finger all the time. Wag your finger at Tim. But so that's kind of, that's kind of been our experience, but it's also been really cool because it has led to, I think that first year that you were referencing,
Hmm.
we thought it was important that we tied recreation and Mammoth Trail Fest, this beautiful place that we all love, that we're there for, because it does something to us personally, emotionally,
Hmm.
psychologically, spiritually. And these places are at risk if we don't, kind of be thoughtful of the way we're engaging with them. And so we did have that amazing panel with Footprints, Runners for Public Lands, Friends of the Annual, one of our local nonprofits.
Yep.
And we screened Friends of the Año film. It was called Without Water, which
Hmm.
in the Eastern Sierra and California, or the entire American West, water rights and issues is a huge thing. And so we played that film. And one thing that stuck out to me was my aunt, who, lifetime hippie, and my stepfather, who falls on the other end of the spectrum, were in like a heated debate over the film. And it was like, okay, this is
Interesting.
getting people talking. Like, I don't think it necessarily, I know it didn't change either their like viewpoints, but it was like, okay, I think it's
Yeah.
healthy that we're exposing people to these things and stirring up conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of the podcast is like talk about climate more, have that communication going. So I also realize I'm sort of diving into the format without explaining it a little bit, but like you now have 4 races over 3 days. Is it like
Yes.
DBA? So Dragon's Back Ascent, which is essentially VK. Then you have the 10K at night on
Yep.
Friday. And then I'm going to get it wrong. Which one's which? 46, 40. How long is
50K
it even? The 50K. Okay, sorry. Is it
Saturday.
actually 50K? Saturday.
It is.
And then a 26K. What's the next one?
Bingo.
Okay. All right. There's a 6.
Yep.
That's a lot of events. You now have so many people signed up. You also have all this programming, which was kind of what I was referring to in between all these different events. There's never, like literally never a dull moment. There's always something going on in town that weekend. It's unbelievable programming. And what I was going to ask was sort of from like gets into a little bit of our Forest Service conversation, permitting, et cetera, that we talked about last time. But like, how many people do you have showing up in Mammoth, and how do you? I mean, and I'm almost asking this too from like I probably should know this as someone who's been there, and you've probably made announcements to everybody at the beginning. But I mean, do you have like sort of those notifications of like, hey, everyone, before you go run this race, like please stay on the trail, or I don't know, like as a race director going into this, what are you like again environmentally? Think environmental bent here, but like what are you most worried about? Like that people are going to go off trail, or what's the permit say that you like can't do? I don't know. I'm curious with all those people showing up in Mammoth, what goes through
Yeah.
your head?
Well, it all starts locally with ours because our race Yeah, the entire thing, with the exception of kind of the start finish in the village, is on Forest Service land. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're operating under a special use permit by the U.S. Forest Service.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the Inyo National Forest is our local agency. And so everything goes down back to that conversation with them. And that was something that preceded the event by several years. I think I started conversations with them in 2019, maybe
Wow.
2018, 2019. And it took me several years to get a permit. And a lot of it was learning how they view and manage the resource, which is the land and
Mm-hmm.
the forest. And because in my, my inexperience, I just thought, I want to put on an event. This is going to be cool. Let's go
Yeah,
do it. Because I've
totally.
seen how they do it in Europe, and that's kind of what it feels like. It's just like, you want to go there? Go. You want to go
Yeah.
there? Go. And so I came into it, very naive, and was humbled by the experience of working with the Forest Service and recognizing the importance of being mindful of what we're trying to do. And so over the years, that dictated and shaped what we now have based on the trails we can run on, the number of people we can have, actually the day format, spacing it out so that we have people over multiple days versus everybody on one day. All those things were part of the
Mm.
relationship built with the Forest Service, and having them help guide me what was appropriate, what was or applicable, and what could be done. Because again, like, I don't come from any foundational background of environmentalism or stewardship, and like, I'm learning every single year.
Yeah.
But having great partners like them have allowed me to learn through this. And so what you described, we now have 4 days of racing, or no, sorry, we have 3 days of racing, 4 days of programming, and it spaces everyone out. Where, being that we've worked closely with the Forest Service to determine, like, I'm not worried about how people are out on the trail. Now, I start every single event, every race, with reminding them that even though this is this is Mammoth Trail Fest, you signed up to be here, you paid, we don't have any right over the other user groups on the trail. And that could be
Mm-hmm.
equestrian, mountain bikers, hikers, walkers, someone that's just lost and ended up on that same trail. Even though you might be shredding for prize money, you need to be a good recreator with them. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's unsafe to pass, you have to wait your turn. And so I do start every race with that kind of note of caution, and just a reminder that even though we love this, we're not the only ones, and we need to be respectful of everyone. And so thankfully, we've now done it 3 years, and every year we've had a Forest Service employee in one of our races, kind of like scoping it out from the inside. And it's been really neat to get their
Oh.
feedback on the experience as a runner, like what they see, what they recommend, and we try to change and make iterations each year based on that. But it's been neat to see so far that from those experiences, our aid stations and others, like, we're not getting the feedback that our runners are being disrespectful out there. And that's an amazing win, that it feels
Mm-hmm.
like from hopefully all the messaging collectively we're getting as a community of runners, and this goes year round from all the events worldwide, like, I think people are starting to like learn, if they didn't already know, like, best practices, and that's what we should all hope for.
Yeah, definitely. I love this undercover Forest Service person that
I
I've
know,
never known about.
secret agents.
Secret, yeah, exactly. Well, what's also really interesting is that I feel like there were quite a few people this year that did all 4 events, right? Like, they did, yeah,
Yeah.
they really sent it, which was, and I think you got a special hat, obviously worth it, very worth it to do that. On the okay, I have a few remaining questions here. But because we're on the Forest Service topic, I just was actually curious.
Yeah.
Have there been any updates on that conversation since we talked, or is that still in flux on that issue?
There have been updates, and I guess for anyone that didn't listen to the emergency pod, we're going to drop a link in the show
Missing
notes.
out.
You're going to go back and you're going to listen. But essentially, big picture is, the forest was projecting, and they followed through, that they had to pull back on budgeting for the fiscal year 25, and they weren't going to be hiring any of their seasonal workforce, which is roughly 2,400 people that help operate the Forest Service and all of the amazing programs they do, which is a huge hit, not only just to the Forest Service, the resource, but recreation. And so what we were trying to do, primarily through Runners for Public Lands, which I'm now a board member of, is we organized runners' voices around the country to advocate on the Forest Service's behalf, to ask Congress to fully fund the Forest Service for fiscal year 2025. Some of the updates on that were, I guess, some of the big wins were we sent the letter, which represented, I want to say, over 700 races, 35 states, 45 or 55 different national forests nationwide. It was like what we think may be the first ever sign-on letter by like runners and race directors to the Congress. So it was like a monumental step forward in like collectively organizing ourselves, like our voices, to hopefully have impact. And it was received positively from legislators and congressional staffers, and they're aware of the impact it has on their constituents. Unfortunately, the budget was not, extended. So the Forest Service currently for 2025 still is not bringing on seasonal workforce. So they're going to be understaffed. Wow. But what we're doing for Runners for Public Lands is once the new administration staff is brought in, we're going to resend the letter to the new people in key positions, start advocating for backfilling the 2025 fiscal year for the Forest Service and rehire some of those, like advocate for more appropriations, and then start doing other things like meeting with Congress members, creating more resources and ways for everyone involved on that first sign-on letter or beyond to connect with us and keep advocating. So while in a sense, there was no change from our efforts, I think it was a monumental first step in just collectively organizing and voicing that this is a user group, which I think I said on the last one, runners in the US are the largest, most diverse, and most frequently outdoor user group out of all outdoor recreators. There's like 60 plus million of us. So we have power. We just need to use that hopefully collectively to advocate for things that we care about.
Absolutely. And I think even, again, like the change that did occur was, I think there was a lot of education shared. Like I didn't know a lot of those stats. A lot of people reached out to me after listening to our episode. They did. And they were like, we didn't know this at all. There's sort of that initial aha moment, if you will, of people being like, oh, we are part of this group and we can actually do something. Great to know that you're going to keep going on some of this. I mean, again, if there's like ways that folks can get involved or any kinds of call to action, it doesn't even have to be here, but we can include those in show notes always. But yeah, that's really exciting. And I do think there was something done. I definitely do. It's like you galvanize people. Yeah.
Well, have you ever planted a tree or grass
I
or
actually
anything?
have. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, who am I talking to? I'm talking to Mary.
Oh my God. I can't even believe I shared that. That is my name because you will literally only call me that forever now. I know that about you. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah. I'm waiting for it to change on the screen here. So, but we, we were prepping the soil basically, maybe we planted a seed, but it's going to take a long time. And I mean, you saw the Explore Act passed unanimously. That was like a 10-year effort.
Yeah.
So like, that was a monumental piece of legislation that like helps recreation. These are long games. We got to think of it like an ultra. Like it's going to be, we're going to be in the grind, in the pain cave for a long time, chipping away. We're going to have to borrow the axe from Courtney. But it's, so I agree with you. I think that there were things gained. We just, we always want more. But I think that's good. It's going to keep us, pushing and advocating and being, a squeaky wheel.
Totally. And now what's cool about that is, I love like in kind of network creation or that galvanizing phase of like, or soil prepping. What did you say? Priming the soil, prepping the soil.
Yeah.
Great. Like that's the phase where you're like, okay, who are the folks? And now So now there's an ease to calling upon people to act or to kind of like rising up together again. I think that's very vivid image in my brain. I was going to ask you what would probably be my most doomsday question on this podcast, but you kind of answered it, which was like, okay, looking to the future, like as a race director, what are the things you're most worried about climate wise for your race? I feel like you answered it with wildfires, but like, I don't know if there are other pieces of that. I mean, honestly, the Forest Service funding issue was one like I never would sort of foresee. I feel like when I think that way, I think weather, but like that is also an issue is funding the services and the stewardship needed to maintain, the lands and the infrastructure, the facilities, even the permitting process felt like everything was going to possibly fall through. So, but yeah, I don't know, like it's what you said about sort of the fire season worry was pretty interesting. Like, I'm sure that's all ever present in your brain. I can't imagine.
It is. And anyone that has lived through fire either directly or proximally or like 1 degree removed or have family members, you can't operate with unseen that the rest of your
Yeah.
life. The devastation that fire has on communities is just heartbreaking. And so that wildfires are probably our biggest threat here locally. Like you said, permitting, other things are always, something that I'm concerned with, because without that, we can't have a race. But I think thinking broader, it's really the fire. And I do think one of the positive conversations over the last decade of seeing these mega fires in California, where if you even look at the 10 most, or I think it's the 20 most destructive fires in California history, like most of them are in the last 10 years. And I know for a fact of the top 10 largest California fires on record, obviously there are fires long before our time and our generations, the 9 of the top 10 are all in the last like 9 years. So like we've had these mega fires where, hopefully it is one of those aha moments that we are learning to live with fire better and finding ways to manage it better, and even educating, obviously, communities. Like, no one likes prescribed burns because of the air quality, but what's worse? 8 straight weeks of poor air quality. It's kind of like, trying to find educational ways to integrate and move things forward. But fire is our biggest risk at Trail Fest. There is, I guarantee, a year in the future, it could be this year, we're opening registration, so please sign up. But it could be any of these years that we get canceled because of a fire. That's just the reality.
Yep, totally. Yeah, sign up for Trail Fest, but also this is a real conversation to have. No, and I think, I think it's something that does not surprise me, and also is something like, I think it's a healthy balance, like what you just mentioned, climate adaptation, right? Like enhancing resilience, doing prescribed burns, like those are things that I think you're right. It is an interesting like behavior change element here, where we're talking about people being like, wait, I don't want prescribed burns to happen because then the air quality is going to be bad, right? But then you're like, well, let's talk about like shifting that mindset, because exactly what you said, like it's better than having however many weeks of or like really destructive, like truly life-threatening fire. So yeah, increasing that is always interesting. 2 more questions, Tim. Then we're done. Promise.
I read your email and you're like 10 over.
You didn't read my email. You have no idea what I'm going to ask. It's going to be a total curveball. Okay.
This is going to be so good.
All right. This isn't necessarily about climate. It can be whatever. It can be about anything. What is your biggest surprise as a race director? Thing you did not expect?
Oh, biggest surprise?
The most surprising thing that you have found organizing a race.
Biggest surprise as a race director. I would say probably how challenging it is year round. For some of the things we already talked about, permitting, marketing, getting people involved, relationship building. There's so many little nuanced things that matter, but it's actually something that I probably enjoy the most, is that there are, dozens of different aspects that I get to kind of pour myself into, and then I get to pivot and do another thing and then another thing. And so, what was my first thing? I'm a wandering generalist. It fits my mind perfectly. It's kind of like, I need to be just okay at all of these things. I don't have to be the expert in any of them, but I need to connect with the people that know what to do. So it's really about relationship building. I guess to that, like the hard part is relationships, but that's also, I think the beautiful part is the relationship portion.
And that's a huge skill set of yours. No, I think like, it's so funny whenever I will talk to you in any season and any month, you'll be like, oh, I got to go, I'm working on Trail Fest. And that's also been surprising as a friend to be like, whoa, wait, isn't that in September? Like you have to do that now, but you work year round on it. And it's, it shows honestly in the event, but it's, it's a ton of work. Okay, here we are. We've arrived at the last question. This is actually, you might have already said this. You might have already answered this, but I'll ask it again. In this recent fire piece you just said. But I ask everyone this to close out. What is your favorite climate solution? that is not yours, which kind of makes more sense if you're a Dakota or a Lauro who came on the podcast who has a trail running environmental justice camp. But like, what is your favorite climate solution or an environmental initiative that you're excited about?
Oh, well, it's a good thing I'm not those people because I'm not an environmental anything. I'm a fanboy of the environment, and I want to connect people that know way more than me and give them a platform to talk. If it hasn't come through clearly enough, I know nothing, but I want to learn more. So I'd say my best environmental, what is it, hack or technique? what was the question?
I like hack.
My environmental hack is
solution.
No hairspray. I just don't shower. I just let the natural oils. So I'm saving the ozone by not using hairspray anymore. It's and then Lindsay has to wash the sheets every single day.
Okay, wait. I think we just had like the biggest breaking news in the trail community. We figured out Tim Tollefson's hair routine. This is wild. This is gonna go viral, Tim.
100-mile weeks without showering.
Hot take. Is that what you actually? I feel like we need to like, this has, people need to know about this. I can't believe it.
I heard on the Second Nature podcast that OnlyFans was starting to sponsor athletes. Maybe if I start my own page, I will release hair tips on there. But
I mean, honestly, you are joking, but you would have a lot of followers, specifically around your hair. We are all curious. How does it defy gravity? Oh, wow. That was a reference I didn't mean to make, but there we are. Tim Tollefson, thank you so much for joining. You do know a lot about environment. And that's the thing is like, I love highlighting everything that you're doing in your day-to-day as a race director, as an athlete, to make your event better, more positively impactful around environmental trends and changes. You know the landscape of Mammoth so well. So it's amazing to talk to you about this. And I feel like that's the exact point of the podcast, is that I too am a generalist that knows I know enough about many things. Right? To be able to highlight and uplift people that actually do know and are actually experts. And so that's the best part. So thank you for joining me. Two generalists talking
just
together.
Wandering around aimlessly,
wandering around climate together.
But an actual practical takeaway other than just don't shower. Let's just throw in like food waste and renewable energy sources. I think are like relatively approachable things that all of us could kind of like think about.
Yeah.
So I'd say those would be my two. Like, buy what you need and eat what you buy, and then like try and, when you can, transfer away from things that are into more renewable sources. Like, I feel like people that are in places of privilege, those are things we can do, and those are things we should do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And great connection to another episode that just came out. I had a friend who's deeply in the electrification space, did like a whole like user journey of, okay, so you want to, make your home green and electrified. Where do you start? And it's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, he's super knowledgeable. Yeah.
I mean, I already listened to it, but I need to listen to it again.
Good save. Yeah, nice job. But no, very much agree. And it's about access, but I think those that can, that's something we can do. Great. Okay, anything else? Did I miss anything? Okay, great.
It's honestly been a treat. Thank you so much for being a wonderful host, Mary, and everything that you're doing to elevate and lift up people with education or with resources and knowledge that need to be shared with the world. So thank you. Thank you, Maria. Mariah. Wait, what is it? Miranda.
Okay, you just gave me 7 new names. This is wow. I do appreciate your sentiment. Do not appreciate the names, but thank you, Timothy Mark, for joining. Very much appreciated. It was so fun to have you. Thank you.